Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's video, Online Access to Archives, Sharing Your Collections is Essential. My name is Bradley Ludke, and I will be your moderator. In this video, we will address the subject of online access to archives by taking a look at ArchivEra Lucidea's archival collections management system. We will be focusing on ArchivEra's portal, as well as the capabilities that enable end users to have a successful online experience. Before we start, I would like to provide some information about our company and introduce today's presenter. Lucidea is a software developing company specialized in museum and archival collections management solutions, as well as knowledge management and library automation systems. Our brands include Sydney, Presto, Argus, ArchivEra, Eloquent, and Quadrastar. Now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Rima Ghanem. Rima is the Cultural Sector Research Analyst at Lucidea, and she will be giving us an in-depth look at ArchivEra in today's video.
Thank you, Brad, for this introduction. As you briefly mentioned, we will take a look at ArchivEra today, Lucidea's archival CMS, focusing on its portal or its public interface. We will address the capabilities that enable end users to have a successful online experience. But before we dive into the system, perhaps it would be helpful to present a few key points regarding online access and the end user experience. I will first go over some of the benefits of providing online access to records and collections. Then we will see together what makes this online experience a successful one for the end user. To begin with the benefits of online access, well, there are many, but to name a few, first we can say that it broadens the archive's audience. Archives are not only for academics and professional researchers. They should be within the reach of everyone in society as long as the archives are open for the public. So when archives are open only for physical visits, there's only so much of the potential audience we can reach. There's a smaller proportion of people who will know about the holdings and can actually visit. And in fact, to give you some numbers here, the government of Canada published a study on heritage institutions in 2019. And even though the numbers date back to 2017, they show that there were 54.6 million visits online to archives in Canada. In comparison with the number of physical visits, which the study showed, that's almost 20 times as much, or what constitutes even 95% of total visits to archives. And here we mean both physical as well as virtual. So this gives us an idea about the magnitude of this online phenomenon. And let's not forget too that if those are the numbers that date back to a few years, imagine in today's day and time what the figure could be. We must not also forget that the archive as a physical space still feels a little intimidating for some. So we know that this is a challenge that archivists are trying hard to change the perspective or the mindset of the general public around archives, but it remains a challenge. So some might have the curiosity to visit, but might still be shy or uncomfortable doing so. So by having the archival holdings available online, we are reaching a much broader global audience. Another benefit is that it instigates collaboration and support. Once we have those collections accessible online, we're delivering wider exposure for those holdings, but not only for the holdings, for the institution itself too. There's easier sharing of information, especially these days. It's in a simple click of a button, hence faster spreading of the information. And with that come more opportunities and initiatives to collaborate and combine efforts. And with more collaboration and support for each other as institutions that care for those historical records, this all leads at the end of the day to raising the institution's profile. Another benefit is that it saves time and resources for the end users or for the online visitors. By accessing archival records online, many users might find the information they're seeking and may not need to physically visit the archives anymore. So not only we're saving them time, but we're also saving them the resources which they might be investing in order to reach the archives or the reading room. And the last benefit is that it also saves time and effort, but for archival staff or reference staff. When end users get the opportunity to view those records online, many of the quick reference questions received on a daily basis at the archives will simply go away. Archival staff will receive more specific or in-depth questions about their collections. In relation to that, there's also the fact that the moving of records to and from the reading room in this scenario is minimized. So we're saving staff the time, and we're also minimizing the handling of the records and the risk of their damage. Now, let's move on to briefly explain what we mean by a successful online experience. Since we're providing a platform to access archives, there are a few essential things to bear in mind in order for our audience to find what they're looking for, but in the most efficient way. First, we need this platform or the system to be an easy one to use. The less we complicate things, the easier it is to reach our goal. So just keeping it simple. Our interface needs to be clean and clear. We also need to make the finding of the material easy. And this is really key in the universe of information. So these days, we're used to working with search engines, with social media, where we look for information in specific ways, and we expect results to be found quickly and easily. And archives are no exception to this rule. There needs to be an understanding of the user behavior so that the searching and finding of information becomes as intuitive as possible. And the last point is to also think of all the related tasks deriving from this search. The experience of the user does not stop at the point where the information is found, but there's most probably further activity that's going to take place on this interface. This might either be sharing the information, getting in touch with the archives, or even generating reports of the information found. So we need to make sure that the tools we're using have to some degree, some capabilities to answer those needs. So all these three elements compose what we think is a successful online experience important to have on a public interface. Now, this brings us to the third part of the presentation, where we take a closer look at ArchivEra and visit some of its capabilities. Since our focus today is on the portal, we will cover the search and browse features, the media elements, the request management component, as well as exhibitions. What we see in front of us here is an example of the ArchivEra portal, but some key information about ArchivEra in general as a system. First and foremost, ArchivEra is a web-based software. So it does not have to be installed on a specific computer or on a fixed station in an office. These days, we're relying more and more on remote work. And just by having your login credentials, you can access ArchivEra from wherever you are, and you can continue working as an administrator. The second point is that the interface can be translated to any Unicode language. And here we don't necessarily mean just Latin characters. It's really any language. As long as it is Unicode compliant, it can be surfaced on the portal. The third point is more about data. So the data which you see on the portal is what's been entered into the back end of the system. So not only this reduces redundancy, because in this case, we're only entering the data once. And what we're really doing here is that we're pushing this information out to the public interface. But we're also saving time and effort, obviously, and we're reducing the risk of any inconsistencies in our data, which is going out to the world. Another point that's related to that is that ArchivEra gives the administrator control over what the public can and cannot see. So yes, we did just say that the data is what's been entered into the backend of the system. However, there's still a margin of flexibility where the administrator is able to surface the information or choose and select what information goes out on the portal and what stays hidden in the backend. And the last point about ArchivEra is that the portal is easily configurable. So anything that you see on this screen here can be configured to match the branding and the identity of your institution and to blend in really well with your website. So everything in terms of elements, text, content, colors, everything can be configurable. Now, let's talk a little bit about searching and browsing with ArchivEra. Knowing that not everyone is familiar with archival arrangement and finding aids, a CMS should facilitate the search to cater for different types of online visitors. And there are several ways by which we can help make this a more intuitive experience. First, we can talk about the featured collections here. So this is the first thing that is brought to our attention once we get on the portal. This is a selection of some collections which are important to have available on the landing page. They could either be, for instance, the newly processed collections or the most popular collections. But instead of having a plain background or an experience that jumps directly into searching, at least we have a warm welcoming, an entry point to those collections for the different visitors who are coming to our portal. When it comes to browsing, well, browsing and searching are two different activities, right? So there are multiple ways to browse the collections. One is able to browse the collections in a very broad way, where they would be able to see all of the collections that are available right now on the portal. They are listed alphabetically. So there's, all the options that are available in the holdings and available on the portal here. They can also browse by creators if they wish to do that. So that's probably for the visitor who knows who the creator, they're looking for a specific creator of fonds or records. And again, they're listed alphabetically in the exact same way. And once one of those creators are selected, all the related records in the database will show up in the list of results. The visitor can also browse by subject. That's again listed alphabetically, but this time we are searching by subject if it's more of a theme which we are looking for or we're searching for. In the same way, let's say we're interested in architecture, go to architecture, and all the records in the database that are tagged with the subject term architecture will show up in the results, regardless of their placement in the hierarchical structure, let's say. Now, let's go ahead and perform a search with ArchivEra and see how it all looks like on the portal. With ArchivEra, we have the option to search in different ways. So we have different methods for searching. What we see in front of us here is the simple keyword search box, but you could also have on the portal a different method, like the advanced type of search, where one would be able to include or exclude certain criteria from their search. You could also have the Boolean type of search or the command type of search. But let's go ahead with the simple one right here. I'm going to type in Chapman, and we're going to see how the results are displayed. So the search term which I used has been highlighted for me to be brought to my attention. And all the records that contain the word or the search term are displayed in the results. We also notice on the left-hand side of the screen, there's these facets that will help the user narrow down or funnel down their search to get more specific or accurate results. Now let's go ahead and visit one of those records. I'm going to go to the collection. It's displaying it's the record view that's on the screen in front of us here. So what I first see here is that there's a description of the collection and a brief summary of how this collection is arranged. So we get an idea about what the arrangement is like. Again, may I remind you that when it comes to the information that is displayed, that's really up to the administrator or the archivist to decide which fields are displaying here, whereas the other ones are still hidden in the back. We notice that there are these icons right here. These will help the user share this record on their social media platforms. They could also be shared by email. If, let's say, we know someone whose topic of research is related to the record we're seeing, we simply send it by email, and then they could have direct access to the record in order to view it. Now, we also notice that there's this finding aid button here. For the visitors who are more familiar with how things are done at the archives and how the archives are arranged, they could go to the finding aid view. Now, the finding aid view is an easy way to visualize the finding aid, where one would be able to navigate through this hierarchical structure in order to go more granularly into the hierarchy. And the information is always displayed on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, for someone who would like to visualize the entire hierarchy, that's also possible. They can simply go to display and they go to hierarchy, and the entire hierarchy is displayed on the screen. Now, let's talk a little bit about media and media attachments. Many end users visit the collections online with the hope really of seeing those historical records. This could be like the exciting or the rewarding part of the visit. So when creating records in ArchivEra, one can insert attachments. ArchivEra can handle born digital as well as digitized assets and records. Audio and video files are supported. And we know that some archives may have some videos or some oral history recordings, for instance. So these can be presented and made available on the portal too. Let's take a look at a couple of examples here. So I've already performed my search. And I notice here that there is an attachment. It's an audio clip that's available on SoundCloud. Well, it can be embedded as an attachment into the record, and it can play right from within the portal. In the same way, we can also have some videos available, and that can play right on the portal. That's a YouTube example. But as for textual files, ArchivEra is able to read text-based files. Well, regardless of what format they're in, they could be Word documents, they could be PDFs, of course, as long as they're OCR'd. The system can pick up on this text and it can show it in the results when performing a search on the portal. Now, when it comes to images, the system is automated to generate derivative copies of the uploaded images. So that's from the perspective of the administrator. This means that the administrator only has to ingest the images once, and the system or the CMS will take care of the rest. It creates derivative copies according to the sizes and dimensions needed. The images can also be watermarked and downloadable if the archives wishes so. So let's take also a look at this image here. There's the click and zoom feature that's available for us too, where the viewer or the audience can zoom into the images if they would like to see details. And we also notice that right underneath the image, there's a box that says comments and contributions. With ArchivEra, we have the ability to present some crowdsourcing projects or have the public contribute to our content and our records. So if we go to add a comment here, ArchivEra opens up this box for us where the visitor is able to submit their information and select what type of contribution they're making. It could either be a comment, it could be a found identity in a photograph, it could be transcription. So they select their contribution type and they go ahead and insert their comment or their contribution. In case they've done or they have a record that is relevant and worth sharing with the archives, they could also attach it to the submission form right here. Now, what you can also do is that you can add a thin layer of privacy here, where you could also ask the audience whether they would like to have their contribution available publicly or not. So rest assured, all the contributions go to the back end of the system. Nothing gets published immediately. And it's for the administrator or the archivist to go through all the contributions that are made. And then depending on whether the contributor would like to have their contribution put on the portal, then that is a decision that is made. Another way for crowdsourcing is transcriptions. You could also have an area on the portal that is dedicated for transcriptions. So we see here this tab, we go to it, and you could have as many transcriptive or transcription projects as you like available for your visitors. So the visitors could select a project, let's say, they read a little bit about it, and they're able to download an attachment which you have provided for them. And once they go to add a transcription, again, a box opens up, and then they can submit their transcription right here. If they've done their work in a separate document or a separate file, they could also attach it and submit it to the archives. Now, as your visitors are going about, their search, they might be interested in some of the records which they're seeing. So they could select some of the records to save them. So they would save them to the cart and continue their work. That could probably be for future reference. And they go about searching. They add to the cart. Now we notice that there is a tab here that's dedicated for those saved items. And the cart functions really like any online shopping cart, which we normally have, where we save the items on the side so that we return to them later. So the idea is the same here. The visitor is faced with two different options at this point once they go to the cart. Either they print or save reports, or they submit a request directly to the archives. And we will get to the requests in just a moment. So we notice that there's this button here that says print. Once we go to it, we notice that there's a list of different report templates. So with ArchivEra, you have the option to have as many report templates as you like available for your visitors. They could be formatted in different ways. They could contain different types of information. So let's say one would like to print or extract a brief report. They select brief report, and then the system would ask them what format they would like to extract their report in. Let's say it's PDF. They go to print, and then the PDF is downloaded. And here it is. We have a brief report of the items which were saved in the cart. They can either be printed or saved on the computer. Now, when it comes to requests and request management, the request management module is a part of ArchivEra. It's built in. It allows visitors to send their research requests directly from the portal. And by having this capability integrated as such in the CMS, we're opening up a venue for easy and direct communication with the archives. So in the instance where the requester has many records to reference, there's no need to switch screens, copy and paste information. It all takes place on the portal in a click of a button and with all the records attached in the message. And we will see how that looks like. So I have my records right here in the cart. I go to submit request, and it takes me to this screen where the requester puts in the information, asks the question, and then we notice that the records are attached. The module itself is also email integrated. So from the perspective or from the angle of the administrator or the archivist, all the email exchange can take place from within the CMS, and no one would notice any difference to an outgoing message from the work email. So with a component that can track all the reference requests or correspondence, automate the workflow, you can better engage with your users, understand their needs, and respond with more accuracy to the requests. If you're also interested in learning more about the request management dashboard or the module, we will cover it in more detail in a later webinar where we'll go over all its composing elements from the backend to see all the details from the administrator's angle. Now, we reach the last part here where we're going to take a look at exhibitions. And as much as archivists strive for neutrality, there are creative ways with which archives can make exhibitions. So I'm going to go to the section, the tab here on the portal that says exhibitions. And with ArchivEra, we have the option to have as many exhibitions as we like. The point really is to bring together archival material that's related from the database and surface it on the portal in order to highlight or strengthen some knowledge around a certain font or creator, for example. So we see 3 examples of different exhibitions here. Let's say we select one. We notice that there are these selected records from the database that were pulled in together to have a certain context or a certain story. Of course, you could have more introductory text available and more context to those records. Now, besides the online exhibitions here, the showcase feature is a new addition to ArchivEra. It's a different form for presenting curated content or telling a story. It's more focused on visual elements, which the visitors can interact with. And although it takes this linear form, which you see, it doesn't necessarily have to tell or display a chronological sequence of facts or events. The content can include text, it can include images, and it can link to records from within the database. But it can also link to outside resources or external resources, such as web pages, or even externally hosted audio and video files. So just like we saw earlier on the portal, in the same way, you could have some audio clips or videos also available that can play right from within here. You can also create, if you have a long story to tell, instead of having to scroll up and down for a long time, you can create these sections, just like the ones you see here, and one would be able to jump to the section directly in order to see probably a piece of information that they were interested in and want to see it again. So this brings us to the end of this presentation today. I thank you for your time, and I pass back the mic to my colleague Brad in case, Brad, if you have any questions or if there was anything that came to your mind while I was presenting, please don't hesitate to ask.
Thanks, Rima. You mentioned some statistics throughout the video. Is there a way to track stats within ArchivEra itself?
Yes, actually, in fact, Brad, with ArchivEra, since we are visiting the portal today, ArchivEra has a part of it or an element that's built into it that records the numbers of visitors on your portal. So this is very important when it comes to understanding who your visitors are and perhaps using these numbers in order for future programming to be done carefully and more accurately. So yes, it is a part of ArchivEra. And we will be taking a look at it in more in depth in a different webinar too.
Awesome. Thank you, Rima. And to our audience, if you have any more questions, our contact details are on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. On behalf of the Lucidea team, I thank you all for attending today. And until next time, thank you.